Every serious engineer who looked at it said the same thing. You cannot build a railway here. Not, it would be hard. Not, it would be expensive. Impossible. And they had proof. Decades earlier, China sent 60,000 troops to push a route across this plateau. They got as far as the foot of the Kunlun Mountains and stopped, beaten by the altitude, the cold, and the ground itself. This is the Qinghai-Tibet Railway. It runs over 1,000 kilometres across the roof of the world to Lhasa, a city that, until 2006, no train had ever reached. Tibet was the last place in mainland China with no railway at all, because the land between had spent a century saying no. Here's what they were up against. Nearly 1,000 kilometres of the line sits above 4,000 metres. Up there, the air carries about 40% less oxygen than it does at sea level. People get seriously ill just standing still at that height. China was about to ask 100,000 workers to do hard physical labour in it, and the ground was worse than the air. Half the hard section is built on permafrost, frozen earth, which sounds solid until summer, when the top layer thaws into mud and then refreezes in winter and heaves back up. The ground breathes. It rises and drops with the seasons. Lay a heavy steel railway across that and it buckles within years. You can't beat that with concrete. So the engineers did something stranger. They decided to keep the ground frozen on purpose. Along 30 plus kilometres of track, they planted rows of sealed metal tubes called thermosiphons. No motor, no power, no moving parts. They pull heat up out of the soil and dump it into the freezing air, all by themselves all year round. Passive refrigeration for the planet's surface. Then they lifted long stretches of the railway onto bridges, not to cross water, to leave a gap of cold air flowing underneath so the frozen ground stays frozen. 160 kilometres of bridge built over solid land for the sole purpose of not touching it. That handles the ground. The passengers are a different problem. The carriages are sealed and pressurised like an aircraft. They were built by Bombardier, a company that also makes planes, and pulled by locomotives from GE in Pennsylvania, because nothing China had could breathe in air this thin. Inside, the oxygen is pumped up to 23.5%, richer than the air you are breathing right now. And if that isn't enough, there's a personal oxygen socket at every seat. You don't even board casually. To ride the high section, you sign a health card first, a waiver to get on a train. It worked. And the number that proves it is genuinely hard to believe. Across 5 years of construction at altitudes that kill, with 500,000 medical cases treated along the way, the number of workers who died from altitude sickness was 0. They built 17 oxygen plants and over 100 clinics, pumped oxygen straight into the tunnels as the crews dug and rotated everyone down to lower ground to recover. 0 altitude deaths on the highest railway ever attempted. Even the wildlife got engineered around. They built 25 dedicated crossings so Tibetan antelope could pass under the line. They stopped construction entirely during mating season and took down the bright flags that spooked the herds. They rerouted the whole railway once to avoid a crane breeding ground, and the trains seal their own waste inside, carrying it off the plateau rather than spill a drop on it. The highest station they built, Tangula, sits at over 5,000 metres. It holds the world record. It also stands empty, unstaffed, because it's too high and too cold for anyone to actually work there. They built the highest railway station on Earth and then couldn't put a single person in it. So they did it. The Impossible Railway. Finished in 2006, a train to a city no train had ever reached. And here's where the title earns itself a second time. The entire design rests on one assumption, that the frozen ground stays frozen. The Tibetan plateau is now warming at roughly twice the global rate. The permafrost is thawing, and it's thawing fastest directly under the embankment where the railway's own heat speeds it up. 3 to 11 times faster under the track than beside it. When they opened it, the official estimate for how long before the thaw threatened the line was 45 years. Within a single year, that estimate dropped to 10. Already, dozens of kilometres have needed heavy repair, and the projected bill for keeping plateau infrastructure standing runs into the billions. They built a railway the world swore couldn't exist, and the one thing holding it up, the frozen ground beneath it, is melting out from under it faster than anyone planned for. It shouldn't exist, and it's running out of the very thing that lets it.